Welcome back, party people. Give me one quick second. I started this way earlier than I probably should have. I gotta finagle a bunch of chords real quick. Okay, so far we're doing good. We're doing good. Anyways, we're back to another Let's Play in history. We're gonna do and continue all this stuff. Steve, my boy, what's going on?
You know, when I first heard about Lilith and her apocalypse, I was skeptical that a resurrected half-demon warrior from the 17th century was going to be our best shot at beating her forces of darkness back. And now, Nico and company made the right call when they raised you from the dead, because I'm pretty sure you're the one who's going to save the day.
You're fond of Nico and magic and the rest of the Sons, are you not?
I am. I think their talents and competence have been totally overlooked by Caretaker.
And that's because Steve's a bit of a rebel here.
Pretty sure with the way you've been leading them, they'll get it.
Which I do want to talk about before I talk about Reagan.
You think
Like-
I have what it takes to be a leader?
Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he's done very well.
You just need
Chris Evans, at least as an actor, and his portrayal is wonderful. Civil War is such a missed opportunity. It really was. You really could have done that entire story real justice and done it perfectly well, but you didn't. You just did a simple, we're gonna do, fighting and yada yada. When the actual story is more along the lines of government interference and the consequences of government interference versus the autonomy of an individual.
I guess I can show you a couple of things.
Whoa.
Good stuff.
Level 12 to 15. Good lord. Huh. Nah, son. Nah.
See you around.
Thanks for coming out to meet me.
Oh lordy. So many meetings.
I actually wanted to ask you a question.
Because that story arc was really imperative.
Ask away.
And obviously was written during the,
Being so nice to me. I mean,
I think it was written during the Bush administration.
I was the one who
Or at least I remember it getting a lot of prominence during the Bush administration.
expecting you of all people to warm up to me.
But it was basically Tony Stark being pro
The answer is quite simple. I respect the power.
government, and Captain America wanting to work outside of the laws that prohibit him from actually saving people and doing his job.
Around here. Everyone
And it was a whole political thing too, where like Spider-Man reveals his identity to show the faith and trust in the government.
It is better to be feared than to be loved, if one cannot be both.
The prince was on Stranger's summer reading list. I have to say, I'm not a fan of Machiavelli. He's a little too, I don't know.
Machiavellian.
Just a real missed opportunity.
Basically,
They played it safe,
if I have to
and they
choose
could have been
between
made it a little bit ballsy, a little bit more intriguing, but they didn't.
even if it means
They chose the easy route. Sorry, way off topic here.
Anyway, I just wanted to say
Most people know Reagan.
thanks for not
Most people know
or
what he's all about. Most people understand historically what he's all about.
You too.
What's funny is I talked to my grandfather, who's 94, and I'd ask him about some of his, what it was like to live during the period that many of these men, were presidents, and what he thought about them, and every single one he's always got something interesting. I'll put it that way.
Can I ask a favor?
Whatever. I don't care.
So, how's the whole saving the world thing going?
Like, he grew up during FDR, so he's indifferent.
I didn't impress myself.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll take that. He, not a big fan of FDR. I believe he voted for Truman the first time he could vote. Oh, this was in 1948. So he would have been, 1948? Get my days mixed up. Yeah, it would have been the first time he could vote. Voted for Truman. Voted for Eisenhower. Big fan of Eisenhower. Ends up voting for Kennedy. Likes Kennedy. And then he kind of shifts a little bit. Goes to Barry Goldwater. I think he was a McGovern person. Trying to think. Voted for Nixon twice. Big Reaganite. And then pretty much ever since Reagan, he's been voting Republican for most of his life. He says Kennedy was one of his favorites. Just the way he walked, talk, how he carried himself, I think was a big reason and aspect for it.
Whatever he viewed as a weakness, we can make into a strength.
I like the way you think. Now I just need to convince Cap that distributing these files to the team is a good idea. This isn't even all of it. There's a whole other section, but I can't access it.
More encryption.
Multiple layers of it.
And I'm very excited too because they are coming out with a Reagan biopic with Dennis Quaid, I believe, portraying Reagan in the film, his early life and then his later life and his presidency, which is going to be very interesting. I was wondering when they were going to do something like that, especially for him, considering how popular he is.
I have no doubt you are the most persuasive when you want to be, Hunter.
Was there anything about me on that drive?
So that's going to be a fun watch, and I'm curious how they're going to portray him, to be honest with you. I think Dennis Quaid is like a really staunch Republican, so I'm thinking he's probably gonna do it at least to some faithful degree, or at least make him look real good. Do 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 do. Oh. Bang. Ba-ba-bum. Oh, that's what the damage is. Oh, magical aftershock. You know, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I think I'm going to do 2 whips. Bam, 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 bam. Okay, we'll confirm that. Super steak. I never use that one, but I have to use that one. Oh, Mac. Okay. That's fine then. Okay. About Cap's deck. Dig in, quick punch. would like to do a Brooklyn handshake. Knock back. Can I do the Brooklyn handshake? Yes. Okay, I'm okay with that. This is really hard to do. Okay. Okay, I think I'm largely okay with most of these. Blah, 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 blah. Spidey have one? Could do. Yeah, I'll do the web throw. Which change strike is better? Can I do 2 change strikes? Okay, I think I'm good with that. Let's go with that loadout. Wait, where's Cap? Oh. Buddy, what's going on?
Up decrypting Crossbone's files. I figure she'd send you. Did she tell you I want nothing to do with it? Because I still don't.
Those files he had on the team are disturbing. If you need to take a moment.
That's not why I left. It was something Crossbones said. The old man. He was talking about my...
Oh, Steve. Ronald Wilson Reagan. Funny enough, was born before Jimmy Carter, who I think in the last part I said was still alive, 99 years old, about to be 100 in October. But as of right now, it seems like he's in not the best physical condition, so it's it could be any day now, to be honest with him. God bless and God forbid, you know, but we all have to pass on at a certain point. But I do hope he makes it to be 100 at least, and has a peaceful rest of his life. Reagan was actually born well before Jimmy Carter. I think he's about 13 years his senior. Born in 1911, originally from Illinois. His mom's Nell, his dad's Jack. Huge believers in, I guess you could say Protestant Christian. They were part of the Disciples of Christ Church. Growing up, he would attend prayer meetings, do all the daily Christian stuff. But growing up, he considered himself more spiritual than anything else, really. Counterattack. Oh, cool. Let's just do that. Let my boy rest. Sure. Now, growing up was very difficult for Reagan. They didn't grow up poor by any stretch, but certainly things were far difficult. he had a very, very problematic and difficult relationship with his father, who was a violent drunk. So what do I have to do? Okay, so I have to battle Hydra, defeat at least 12 enemies, and I have 3 turns to do it. Okay.
Like it's up to me.
I don't think I'm doing this right. Sure, let's just do that. Eviscerate Wolverine! He talks about one moment in particular. I remember reading that his dad had come home from like an all-night bender, and it was like in the middle of winter, and he was outside drunk, about to freezing basically, but he's drunk and can't really move. And Reagan just watched him for like half an hour, contemplating whether or not to just leave him outside to die in the freezing temperatures, which it's a very complicated answer for him. He had so much negativity towards his father, but it's also like it's his dad, so very difficult upbringing.
Still got some time. Tear them to shreds.
Lord, just give me regular fighting cards. Like, I'll take this, at least. Defeat them. That's what, 4 or 5? God, I'm doing terrible so far. Please do. Sure. The problem is I don't need to just defeat one enemy. I need to defeat multiple enemies. Most of these are just going to be overkills. I think I'm doing this right. Despite that, went to school, did his due diligence there, tried to learn as much as he could, tried to be a good student. I think I'm gonna fail this because I don't. Ugh. Should have just done a regular mission. Should have just done a regular mission. I have 2 turns remaining. Oh, wait. Ugh.
Time is almost up.
Let's just restart
Much as
this.
you can.
Let's try this. Hmm.
Never gets the job done.
You are 27. Oh, really? So literally, I have 1 health left.
Hope you're ready. You aren't good enough for me.
He would end up going to school in Illinois. Again, good student, very athletic. Played football, worked as a lifeguard, did all the things you could think of a regular person in the mid 1920s. I think to get away from his home life a little bit. He also had a brother too. He ends up joining a bunch of clubs, specifically sports, drama. You know, he liked, obviously he's an actor. Got into politics to a certain degree. Ugh.
You've still got some time. Tear them to shreds.
I hope this is one of the stronger arms. We did come all the way here for a fight. Follow my movement.
That must have taken practice.
Actually, I think I'm just gonna. I'm gonna go. Yeah, let's just go back to bed. I don't want to do that mission, just to be honest. Reagan goes to Eureka College around 1927, 28. He goes to college before the Great Depression.
Awake? Come to Central. I need to show you something.
Ugh.
I'll keep trying to break this code while you work it out.
Honestly, I'd rather just do this. me level up Iron Man real quick. Why did he not get leveled up? This game's BS, man, I swear.
Steve.
You know, when I first heard about Lilith and her apocalypse, I was skeptical that a resurrected half-demon warrior from the 17th century was going to be our best shot at beating her forces of darkness back. And now, Nico and company made the right call when they raised you from the dead, because I'm pretty sure you're the one who's going to save the day.
That is quite a meaningful.
Alright, skipping. I just don't care. Cap's my boy, though.
Thanks for coming out to meet me.
Team friendship. Cool. Okay. Goes to Eureka College. Does everything there. He's so small. Actually becomes a student body president at Eureka College, joins a fraternity, plays football.
Maybe you can give them a lesson they won't forget.
Heh. Let's do it again. See, that's just smart. Physics. While in college, he was shown to be a pretty good actor. Convincing, strong. He had a good voice, and gave him an opportunity actually to work at a radio station in Iowa. Once he graduates, he goes to Iowa, takes a job as a sports broadcaster for the Big Ten Conference. Funny enough, isn't that crazy? Imagine being a broadcaster and be like, hey, you could be the next president of the United States if you're a broadcaster here. He was wonderful in the play-by-play accounts, yada yada. Traveled all across the country during the Big Ten games, and specifically in California, where he's approached by Warner Brothers to actually become a potential movie star. So this is like 1936. He's in his mid-20s around at this point. Starts going into movies. Most of these movies would be considered B films, but you know, every now and then he would get a couple of films in there that were, you know, oh, he's working with Marilyn Monroe, yada yada, you know, like, you know, I mean, I don't think he ever did, but point being, like, you know, he was starting to become a pretty famous individual and prominent individual. One of them was in this movie called Newt Rockne, All American, where he portrays this guy named George Gipp. That's where, for those of you who don't know, his nickname, the Gipper, came from. Two for one special. And at this time, he's becoming a very prominent movie star. But then World War II happens. Ends up signing a bunch of different studio contracts, like with RKO, Universal Studios, etc., etc. Excuse me. In which case, once war breaks out, he joins the army. I think he was actually part of the Army Reserves first. How many people are left? Bro, how are you still alive? BS. But he would make films for the troops during World War II. You know, some propaganda films, let's be honest. Post World War II, ends up getting an opportunity to be the Screen Actors Guild president. And at this point, this is like 1946, 47. He's back in Hollywood, and he was fervently anti-communist in every sense of the word. Oh, now you want to hang out, Tony? Let's lounge by the pool shirtless, bro. Oh. Ooh,
We can do something else if you want.
No, the whole situation. Chasing magic pages from an evil book, facing your creepy demon mom, hiding in the abbey.
Around this time, he gets married to his first wife, Miss Jane Wyman. They have a very difficult and tumultuous relationship while he's in, you know, this is all happening. They ended up getting divorced 1948-49, where during his time as the Screen Actors Guild president, part of that's just because betrayal of him siding with the anti-communist people, yada yada, and just difficulty in their marriage. Part of that too was because Reagan was very into politics, a fervent Democrat who was against communism. They had 2 kids together. One of them died, which ironically later that year, when they divorce, he meets this young brilliant lady, Nancy Davis, where, you know, would be the next first lady. They meet. They don't actually date initially, but he sees her. They get along pretty darn well, and ultimately it leads to them eventually getting married, where they would have 2 children themselves. But as a Screen Actors Guild president, he was pretty liberal in trying to get negotiations done for actors, and it's ultimately led to him getting labeled initially as like a, well, I'll put it this way, because he's fervently anti-communist, but it's also fair to say that he had a lot of progressive social activities and proclivities. He was very for the people, and he did a lot of very good things for them. Yeah. But unfortunately, it takes a big toll on him, and ultimately ends up resigning from his Screen Actors Guild president duties because he just wants to work, be regular. Brooklyn handshake. Let's do that.
Big Tony's Forge of Mystery. I'll make something great out of this. It's all yours.
Do. Now, despite some issues with the anti-communist stuff and basically subjugating a lot of the people to the Red Scare, you know, House of Un-American Activities Committees and all that, he's still popular in Hollywood and still has a lot of pull. Ends up transitioning to television. You are my cinema, like I love you forever.
I can see you, Vern. Let's do this. Hydra won't want to tussle with me now.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Constant innovation.
Double that attack.
Stark promise.
Caretaker said I need to be a team player. So I guess
So far, so good. Okay.
do your thing.
Hey, can I ask a favor? Okay, well, thanks anyway.
'Cause I already know I'm not gonna do it. Not doing it. Ooh, Red Skull. Anyways, he goes into television, becomes the host of the General Electric television theater.
There's some hints and crossbones
Um,
that a few of the tunnels might even be older. How much do we trust Crossbones' data?
He does that for quite a long time.
Smash and grab, Logan.
I see where this is going. It's a
Pretty much until like the 60s, he's pretty much just the host of that show. And he just does that for quite a while.
Oh, you're strong enough to take it.
Now, while all this is going on, he's a fervent Democrat, very, very aggressively political. I would say he is a conservative Democrat, in fairness, in a lot of ways. But he did believe in FDR. He did believe in a lot of the things that he was espousing. Big fan of Harry Truman. Also a big fan of Eisenhower. And Nixon.
dating Crossbones is proof of that pudding.
That's right. I wonder what kind of
You know, he's a fervent capitalist by every single stretch of the imagination.
But while it would make some titillating nightmare fuel, we have
Against Medicare, against a lot of things that would basically pushed against interpersonal freedoms or federal overreach. He was always generally against.
Agreed.
This actually was a big reason why he was dropped from his television show, ironically. And from 1962 to 1963, from that point on, he's basically just a fervent Republican. And then he gives, the whole thing about, the party left me, yada yada. Pushes for huge fan of Barry Goldwater. Has this famous speech, for those of you who haven't listened to it. It's called For a Time for Choosing, which is both... what he's saying is true. And then people still criticize the speech, and I just think it's ridiculous. It's a whole long speech that he gives at like a dinner, big fancy dinner, and it's like a 15-minute speech on why Barry Goldwater should be the president, and gives a pretty good argument for it. And honestly, like it's something that people should listen to if you want to see what was going through Reagan's mind when a lot of these things happen. What he wishes would have probably happened. I think I'll put it this way. Reagan is not the best man ever. I think he did try to do good. I think he just was stubborn and, just very old school in a lot of the ways that he grew up, and probably doesn't endear himself to his own children, in fairness, or a lot of people, but I also think he means well, and I think he means better than most presidents, really. And in particular, I think when you fervently believe in these ideas, and you are right, and you're going to be willing to fight for them, I'd rather believe in someone who believes in these ideas than someone who is a consistent flip-flopper and continues to show that you're a flip-flopper. But after that speech, he becomes a really big name. A lot of people were like, hey, maybe you should run for office, and decide, you know what, I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna run for political office and see what's gonna happen. So he first attempts to run for the governor of California, ends up beating Pat Brown. Pat Brown had beat Nixon in his election bid. This is about 1966 at this point. Basically just saying, we're going to run California very conservatively. Wins unanimously, because obviously he's an actor and a prominent individual who everyone sees on TV, and he's saying all the right things, basically.
No offense, but she's probably right. I'm so flimsy nowadays, I could sneeze on one and the damn thing would break.
Does it get easier?
With time, I didn't adapt overnight. Rolled with the punches as they came. You're like Steve. You got that culture shock. You'll get there. Change isn't always a bad thing.
We just adapt.
Exactly.
Who I talk to?
Hunter, hello.
I talk to Cap.
Hunter, you're headed into unsecured tunnels beneath Mount Wendigo with Wolverine as your guide. I'd understand if you've got some worries.
I have full faith in Wolverine, and I can handle myself. We'll be fine, no matter what we find in those tunnels.
That is some A-plus courage you're displaying, Hunter. You and Logan will make us all proud.
What was Logan saying about someone named Sin?
Oh, yes. She's a member of Red Skull's family. I've tangled with her a few times. She's a chip off the old block. Minus the giant red skull, of course.
Do you think she knows
Project
about this Project
Gotmorn.
I have no doubts. Crossbones was going to give his intel to anyone besides Lilith, it would have been her.
But he did not. He gave it to you.
Right. That leaves us little choice. If we don't find this Project Buck order, it's only a matter of time before Sin does. Good luck out there.
That strong chisel jawline.
No need to boat.
Okay. Happy with this?
According to the map, the way into these tunnels is in a ravine at the base of the mountain. We can bring you right up to
How can this be?
Now, Reagan's time as governor, he's governor for about 10 years.
20 minutes.
It's very complicated. People look back on it as negative.
Said that after
I think it's very mixed, I'll put it that way. A lot of conservatives said he betrayed his constituencies in California because he said he would lower taxes, ultimately ends up doing things that ends up increasing taxes, although he eventually does lower it later. And signs some of the most restrictive gun control laws in the country, which that is fervently true. And the only defense in Reagan is that it was just a clear overreaction to a bunch of the civil rights stuff that was happening in California, the Berkeley stuff. I think a lot of the problems really, honestly, stem from the previous administration, in fairness, in California. Mainly because California was already in a financially difficult situation, so it's not like they could do a whole lot. And he just tried to help people. And the only thing I can even give him any benefit of the doubt for, really, is that this is his first time running and leading for public office, so I mean, there's not a lot, and he has no idea what he's doing. So like I said, the one thing in his defense is, at the very least, he learns a lot of the mistakes that he learns a lot from his mistakes, and I think ends up doing things much better and much differently. And also, too, because of the media, and the fact that he's a Republican, he's just looked at so negatively with like a... with such a fine-tooth comb that it might be just a little unfair to completely criticize it for things that people otherwise would, praise. Democrats would give the benefit of the doubt to Democrats.
Nice move, bub.
Excuse me. Because despite the difficulties, and I think a big problem too is that this is at a point when things economically are just difficult because of, federal government, federal overreach. Basically saying that it's not completely his fault in that way. It's not his fault that the federal and national economy is not doing good. It's not his fault that Democrats are just running this country to the ground at this point, and that Nixon's plans aren't completely foolproof, you know? So yes, he does mess up a lot. I also think a lot of things are just not his fault, you know? For better and worse. For right or wrong. Once he leaves the governorship, he doesn't seek re-election. It ends up being won by Jerry Brown, famously in California. I think 2 or 3-time governor Jerry Brown. He tries to run for the presidency in 1976, throws his hand in there, but Ford unfortunately has a lot of power. A lot of people, the people want Reagan to be his vice president at the very least, and I think there was a bit of a battle, you know. Henry Kissinger is a big prominent individual who I'll probably talk about just a little bit here at a certain point, which led Ford to basically win the nomination despite, I think, a lot of people not wanting him. Ford loses, Carter becomes president, and Reagan over the next 4 years is basically just buying his time and chilling like a villain.
So where are those things coming from? The way they move, these villains may have come from beyond our world.
You know, every chance he gets criticizing Jimmy Carter, advocating for small government and a strong national defense. I don't need these. Why can't I get rid of them? Ugh. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Who has the most health?
Really driving that thing? You or the computer?
Keep in mind, Reagan at this point is nearing like his 70s. By the time 1980 rolls around, and so 1980 primaries are coming around. It's pretty much just Bush and Reagan at this point. I mean, other people are there like Bob Dole, Howard Baker, other individuals who are trying to run for the presidency. Both of those two would drop out pretty immediately. Is it death?
Sure, just keep throwing bodies at the problem.
And Bush was the establishment candidate. Let's just put it that way. He was the guy. I'm pretty sure. I haven't even looked into it, but because Reagan lost the Iowa caucus unexpectedly, which I'm gonna say probably some shenanigans. ended up happening as a result of that.
I should have been through by now. These things aren't that tough.
You are the man with the claws. Do something about it.
Let's overheal you.
But effective.
Where is that?
This shall be of great help.
Thank you. This is the card I was waiting for. Ooh, frame rate drop.
I hope you are building one of those suits for me.
Time to see if Red Skull.
Why couldn't you do that earlier, Tony?
Weapon here.
Interesting. Long story short, Reagan has a primary debate with with the Republicans who are vying for the presidency and the nomination. Has the big thing, I'm paying for this mic, yada yada yada. Basically, he just wins. He's just the guy, you know. Meanwhile, Jimmy Carter's dealing with the Iranian hostage crisis. And a lot of people are throwing all these negative attack ads at Reagan, just attacking him, including Carter, saying he's going to destroy Social Security, yada yada yada. It's pretty crazy how things go and how politics go sometimes. One thing about Reagan that and we'll give him credit for is he's pretty quick-witted, he's pretty endearing, he's a fantastic speaker, despite what, because I've heard some people say he's not a good promoter or speaker, and I'm just like, this is the guy who said, you know, tear down this wall, are you serious? Like, come on. It's ridiculous, some of the negative criticisms lately about him. Let's do this.
The advantage is mine.
How much health do you have? And I have to survive again. I just have to survive. Okay. Bam, bam. Bam, bam. Basically, Reagan in 1980 wins the presidency. Decisive electoral college victory, wins 51% of the popular vote. God, he wins. How many votes does he have? Let me look it up real quick. 489 electoral votes. Carter wins 6 states. I mean, and Republicans get a majority in Congress for the first time since 1952. Like, good lord, you know. Wolverine can take it. He's the man. A bunch of things happen. Reagan gets inaugurated, gets shot as an assassination attempt done on his life.
This is a dangerous game of cat and mouse.
Not so enjoyable when you are the prey.
The last president, so, you know, the most recent one, Mr. Trump himself getting almost killed. Reagan was shot, ended up, yeah, let's just do that. It's all about survival here. They called him the Teflon president, but he was shot. They were able to save his life, take the bullet out, recovers soon after, starts implementing his policies, and you want to talk about a popular president at that point. You know, Reagan does have some balls, I'll put it that way. Now, just talk about it, Reaganomics, which some people look at as laissez-faire capitalism, which is basically supply-side economics. The more things you have, which, if I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the biggest proponent of it, but I'm like, it just makes sense. Data backs it up. Like, if people, if there are more things, full health. Oh, sweet. Like, if there are more things, that means people can buy more things at cheaper costs. Because the more of the thing that there is, the cheaper that it's going to be. And it actually worked. Didn't work for the first year because it takes a while. It's not going to be immediate overnight successes. But ultimately, it does work. Now, does it always work? No. And the reason why is because there's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it. Your tax rates, your production as a country, what are you doing overall. And I think Reagan's idea of the country was that despite there being increased deficits during his presidency, because they were spending on security and defense, if we could raise the economy and get people working, create more revenue overall, and we could still lower taxes and still increase revenues because, well, more people are paying into taxes, etc., and we can actually, you know, not go into complete default on everything.
That would be too easy.
You'll leave when Mother says so, not before.
This shouldn't take long.
Ooh, Hulk man. At this point, it's just about surviving him, right?
all that money, it better work.
Mother's anger flows through.
And it was a tough go at first, to be honest. Initially, in the early 1980s, unemployment because of the Carter administration and because of a drastic change in the economy. The unemployment rate was around 10% in his first year. Halfway through his term, though, the economy completely rebounded. The recession ended. Unemployment was as low as 4%. Inflation had dropped from 12%, which is double digit from the Carter administration, to closer to like 5%. Everything worked, and it just did. Were there bumps in the road? Of course. Were there things that were difficult? Of course. But to say that Reaganomics didn't work is, I don't think, a fair assumption. And I think trying to justify or make arguments and excuses ultimately for Reagan as a bad president.
Maybe our only chance.
That ain't a chance, kid. It's a monster. Come on, ugly. Let's finish this.
The biggest problems of anything during his presidency was he did go back on a couple of things, specifically guns, federal spending overall, and I would say probably that's largely it. But those are like two core things that he fundamentally believed in, that he went against, like foundational principles and morals. A lot of things are happening too. Unions were fighting left and right, civil rights strikes and all that, and a lot of things were happening. The war on drugs is happening around this time too. A lot of jailing of black people, yada yada, for selling drugs. And then of course there's the foreign policy stuff. Let's just say it. The increased tensions with the Soviet Union, Star Wars, yada yada yada, which eventually leads to, over time, the fall of the Soviet Union. And I'll just get to it real quick. Ronald Reagan, in 1984, runs for a re-election bid. At this point, he is in his 70s. Goes against Walter Mondale. Just kicks his ass. He, despite the popular vote victory, and despite him winning 525 electoral votes, he won 49 states. It's insane. Mondale only wins his home state of Minnesota and the District of Columbia. But I will say this. If you look at polls, and I've been really getting interested into polls and how a lot of electioneering and all that stuff works, and Reagan was vulnerable in 1984 based off of polls. Like, if you change a couple of things, he could have easily lost like 10 states, that didn't happen, obviously, and I mean 10 states is nothing when you're up, basically 60-0 in a football game, but things could have been a little bit different, I'll put it that way. But a lot of world changing things are happening. The AIDS epidemic is happening, and Reagan really didn't do anything about it. Actually, he put Fauci as really the lead head of the crisis that is going on, which is not good. Apartheid is happening, bombings all across the world, Libya, Iran-Contra, issues with Asia and trying to open things up again in China. Largely, for the most part, most of his presidency is always going to be focused on historically for like the Soviet Union.
Very dangerous man indeed. And we're all safer that he's no longer among the living.
I think the world is safer because you are here protecting it, not because this Red Skull is gone.
I'm just one man, Hunter. It's all of us together that keeps the world safe. That includes you, Tony, Caretaker. Even the ghosts around here do their part.
Reagan, after 1989, leaves office. Actually has a pretty good relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev, mind you. Which, thank God Gorbachev came in, because he replaces the old head. I forgot who Gorbachev replaced specifically, but Gorbachev and Reagan did have a pretty decent relationship, because Reagan was not getting along with the previous guy. Both are two just hard-headed people who would not back down. Sorry, that was just way off topic. Anyways, he leaves office at 77 years old, the oldest president to leave at the end of his tenure until now.
I'm not sure it is. It's just a hunch.
As Joe Biden will be
See if my hunch
81, 82 years old when he leaves office.
if it is. The Godfather might be on
They just chilled. They left.
Putting an
Reagan has a very weird relationship with his children, I'll put it that way. Reagan did a whole bunch of different things promoting Republican politics.
There's only two members of the blood left in all creation, Hunter.
And
When we defeat her, my only sister will be dead, and our kind will be nearly extinct.
pretty much just shies away from public life. I think the last public appearance was he was there for Reagan's funeral, or not Reagan, Nixon's funeral, and just gave a big speech in which DC paid a big tribute to Reagan.
A tragic destiny.
Tragic for me.
Big reason for that is because in 1994 Reagan ended up being diagnosed with
That is all that matters.
Alzheimer's, unfortunately for him. He started exhibiting it in a couple years earlier, but overall, by like 1998, he's pretty much just like a shell of his former self, unfortunately. 2004, he ended up being confined to his bed, and unfortunately, ends up dying. Reagan dies and leaves a very complicated history and a complicated legacy, but ultimately I think leaves America in a very unique position for numerous reasons. I think my biggest problem with Reagan is like if his first term he was pretty hands-on, did a lot of really good things, pissed off a lot of people, and then his second term he really took his hands off the wheel, let HW do a lot of things. So you see a lot of the influence, especially considering the fact that he was out the door and HW was his successor. So, you know, yeah, creates a bunch of problems there. That's Reagan. One who I would probably say is much more, like, he's not like the 5 presidents I like, but he's certainly at least not one I hate. God bless, like and subscribe. Hope you all enjoy this. We're just gonna talk about other historical figures, not presidents anymore. I think I'm done with the presidents because it's all bad from this point on. God bless, like and subscribe though, guys. Later.